Election 2024 is here, and this time, we got Godzilla as the primary going against Joe Biden. As the election results on the map show, the King of the Monsters is estimated to win on a massive landslide since 1988, with more than 400 electoral votes and earning the biggest popular vote since 2020. Will Godzilla win America and make it an anti-communist country? Stay tuned and... Wait, this isn't 2024 yet. Still better than Cringe News Network. Hello everyone, Obscure Titan here with an essay for the Zynektic series. I covered the 4 main entries in its own continuity, and now here it is. Godzilla vs. the Zynektoverse. It was an idea originally proposed by Comedic Comrade on Discord, who thought that because he was a fan of my original series, and also being a Godzilla fan himself, would be a neat idea for these asymmetrical yet practical works to come together. We've had our own iterations for how the novel could be made, and while his was a little bit more involved, mine was a little bit more straightforward, and made specifically for my Mortal Brothers 2019/Zynektic continuity. I'll let him explain his side of things before we get into the novel itself. Take it away, Comedic.
Hey guys, it's Comedic Comrade here. I've been a friend of Titan for 2 years now, and I have also helped him out on numerous occasions with his projects. Today, I want to explain what it was like from my perspective to propose Godzilla vs. the Zynektoverse to Obscured Titan. It was early 2021, in the run-up to the release of Godzilla vs. Kong. The Zynektic World War was released in January 2021, 2 months prior to GVK's eventual release on March 31st. I was intrigued by the Zynektoverse, and with the latest installment of the Monsterverse on the horizon, I initially proposed the Godzilla crossover with the Zynektoverse in February. At first, the idea didn't really go anywhere, but when I re-proposed it in April, Titan liked the idea, and so Godzilla vs. the Zynektoverse was finally coming to fruition. We both had our own individual concepts regarding how it would go, but ultimately the premise remained the same. Godzilla encounters the Zynektoverse and chaos ensues. The both of us decided to make our own versions of the same story. His version has already been released, whilst mine has currently been put on hold, but I will try and get back into it sometime down the road. Titan drew up a few drafts for his version, and the one he is about to explain to you was the one that was greenlit by myself. Overall, I am happy with how his version turned out, and I hope the rest of you watching this are too. That's all from me today, and thank you for allowing me to join the video, Titan. I will see you up ahead.
Thank you, Comedic. Your time in this essay really helps. As usual, we'll go over this novel chapter by chapter. Now that we've got our explanations out of the way, let's get started. In 3414, taking place just a few months after the events of the Zynektic World War, things seem to be in good condition. That is, except for Rexos, specifically in the Bokshai cell. Squashawkus moans and pouts about their faction's failures. This leads him and Bokokoro blaming each other over their faction's downfall, and allowing Radeligro to take back his kingdom. Their argument got the attention of one of the Comedic guards outside of their cell to shut them up. At first they pouted. Eventually Bokokoro pulls out a bottle of substance, which he uses to stun the guard from outside and becomes subservient. The substance makes him think that Bokokoro looks like Radeligro and releases him and his second command. They make their way to escape, alongside their imprisoned Comedics who were still loyal to his cause, and attacked anyone who got in their way. So Darkidile arrives shortly after and informs Sergeant Kavolika to bring Bokokoro to an underground prison in Kilkalok. But just as soon as he was about to do his duty, Bokokoro's forces pushed right at them and attacked anyone in their way. He orders his minions to find a ship to steal in the Bokshai cell, take any amount of Zynekticity, and take off with the ship away from their home planet Rexos. Shortly after their escape, a vessel in space flies about, eventually arriving to the Zynektopolis second, larger than the previous one prior to this novel. It appears that Zao Darkro and Kavolika hurried their way to a room and met both Radeligro and Syra for an emergency. Going through an elevator, they arrive to the conference room. In it, there stood Syra, Jabe, Irak, Adrakan, Sidored, and Rodelicro, all of which turned their attention, warning them that Bokokoro and his minions escaped the Bokshairak cell on the planet Rexos. They all agreed to go after the bastard and put a stop to his terror before he does anything to bring about a similar catastrophe Zyboglis did some time ago. Arriving to an alternative Earth timeline, which is ours, in the year 2024, in the District of Columbia, our buddy Sleepy Joe asks about his Godzilla project, mistook his name for Mobzilla. Yeah, I know, just roll with it. He can't even make a coherent sentence at this point.
Come on, give me a break, man.
Alongside him are Fauci, Sanders, and Harris. All with their wonderful personalities, they all discuss their secret Godzilla clone project, which is sarcasm, by the way. But as it continued, a spaceship arrives to the White House outside and Bokokoro's crew appear before them. Kakaris asks if they could kill them, but Bokokoro objects. Instead, he confirms he and his minions were refugees who came from Rexos and being unfairly treated by Rodelicro, trying to get on Biden's good side. Both groups went into the White House and proceeded into an underground lair where a Godzilla clone is being created. But as it went, their Colonel Douglas Gordon warns them not to trust them. After all, meeting strangers is no good. But this is Joe Biden, and so that happened. They ignored Gordon's warnings and proceeded onward. Once they did, Sanders mentioned that they tried to get the Godzilla clone to awake with their environmentally safe energy, which of course didn't work. Bokokoro suggests using their dose of Zynekticity, in which it could work for the kaiju himself. As soon as the formula was injected into the creature, Godzilla came to life. Zynektic Godzilla arises and begins to charge up his dorsal plates. Biden and the scientists fled for their lives. The monster burrows his way out of their lair and begins to prowl his way to Maryland. Meanwhile, at the Zynektoverse II, the heroes walked at the hallways quickly without a word regarding Bokokoro's escape. Shortly after, they receive a message from Crimzoid that Bokokoro is in another timeline, Alternative Earth 2024. Sara and Jape responded that they'll be on their way there. They informed him and his allies to head to Xeroxia if anything bad comes about. Jape and Sara fly out of Zynektoverse II and enter a dimension where Alternative Earth is located. Godzilla makes his way into the southern regions of Maryland. People flee in terror, calling for Uncle 46 to come and save them, which we know doesn't happen. As the monster brings destruction, a multitude of ships, F-15 Eagles, arrive in stopping him, which of course didn't go well for them. Godzilla obliterates them with his selective breath and leaves nothing of them in his wake. But while he's on it, Rodan and Anguirus make their appearance. Both have fought the king of the monsters, but to no avail. He eventually defeated them with ease, but Mechagodzilla and Jet Jaguar entered the ring and fought against the clone. They both used their might and electric abilities to stun Godzilla, only to be beaten down. Upon arrival, Jabe and Sara rush into the scene, seeking elsewhere for help or cover. They sought after a facility seeming larger than most buildings in Maryland. Godzilla's continuous aggression against the two mech machines was proven to be too much for them. Entering the building, they met scientists who immediately fled hearing Godzilla's attacks from outside, with the exception of Dr. Dursect. Dr. Dursect introduces himself to the two maidens and explains what his place was made to do. He calls it the Upscale Fusion Kaiju Device, a place built to take two individuals, fuse and upscale into one giant figure. Jape took this as an opportunity, while Sara was somewhat reluctant at first, but nonetheless, they agreed to use it and both became Jaira. Yes, that is her name, and have a kaiju emblem made for her. Anyways, she flees the facility and begins to challenge Godzilla. At first, she seemed to have handled him better than other kaiju who failed to stop him. One thing to note is that Sara controls Jaira's actions, while Jabe speaks through her. She held onto his dorsal plates long enough until he shook her off with his tail and flung into buildings nearby. The king of the monsters charges up his fins and fires his Zynektic breath into her. Thus, she splits into Jabe and Sara once again. It wasn't until King Ghidorah and Gigan entered the scene and defeated him initially. It would seem that Bokokoro got some control over the US government and raided resources from it so he could use them for his retaliation against Rodelicro and the Obscurux Trivium for his downfall. Going through a portal to Xeroxia, Bokokoro leaves with Godzilla captured. The scene ends with Jabe and Sara lying unconscious in their defeat. In the midst of the mayhem, people gathered through the White House and pressured Joe Biden to answer for what transpired in the event. They asked him about stopping the monster, agreeing if it's worse than COVID. They even reported damaged locations to southeastern counties in Maryland, and northeastern Virginia, to be fair. Biden deflects the questions, only to be met with someone commenting about Lyndon B. Johnson being responsible for the Godzilla clone's creation. The president's usual gaffes and stuttering causes even more strife in the crowd and proceeds to leave. It was so bad that Commie Sanders escorts the dude through the White House. It's no wonder why his approval rating is going to go lower than 30% by 2025. Long after the fight, Jabe and Sarah awake to see a figure standing before them. Douglas Gordon introduces himself as an appointed member of the Republic Godzilla Prevention Program. His task was to ensure that the US government does not attempt to create a nuclear-powered kaiju, or rather any kind even without nuclear power. He questioned if Jabe and Sarah had any part in the fight Godzilla was in, and nodded yes. They recalled Godzilla was taken to Zynektoverse by King Ghidorah and Gigan, along with Bokokoro in an attempt to use him for the Comedic's purposes. Jabe and Sarah agreed to fuse back to Jera again, help Gordon get Godzilla back from Bokokoro, and prevent the Comedic from achieving his goal. On the planet Zynektoverse, Bokokoro makes his pursuit for revenge. With King Ghidorah and Gigan by his side, they were able to tie Godzilla with the three-headed dragon's electric energy. Godzilla attempts to fire back with his Zynektic breath, which results to the two monsters huddling him down on the ground while still entangling in energy. Upon arrival to Zynektoverse, Jera confronts King Ghidorah and Gigan. She places Colonel Douglas on the surface before the battle begins. The giants fought furiously, as the latter attempts to free Godzilla while fending off the former. She took on Gigan first, and beheads him with her spear. Ghidorah drags Godzilla with him and begins crushing the Disgaea city. Jera enters the scene while Douglas Gordon fights off against Comedic soldiers who are still loyal to Bokokoro's cause. The three-headed dragon takes notice of Jera and attacks her. He catches her by her hands, only for Godzilla to retaliate and blast the dragon's middle head. This weakened the creature and fell to the ground. This chapter ends with Godzilla destroying Ghidorah's body and explodes. After the battle against Ghidorah and Gigan, Godzilla and Jera stood up in victory. Bokokoro was at Jera's mercy, begging her to spare him. Taking notice of Godzilla leaving, she tries to get his attention. This results him to firing back after creating a time portal. Doing so caused the two split again and fell. They were rescued by both Radeligro and Zalderico in their ship and got Bokokoro at their captive once again. Once this was all over, the heroes agreed to teleport Gordon back to alternate Earth. As for the King of the Monsters himself, inside a white-pink portal, Godzilla ventures around until he comes across a gap where he enters Nexus Netherworld, set several years in the past in another timeline. Once he arrived, Godzilla slowly steps towards an auditorium where Mysilika holds a concert and spews out the atomic breath. Hence, Godzilla vs. Mysilika commences. Before we end this video, it's worth discussing how Zynektic Godzilla came to be, on my side anyways. Comedic and I discussed hypothetical designs we'd end up sticking to, some of which being from the Millennium era, while others from Singular Point. But with Godzilla vs. Mysilika being conceived, I went with a NECA Tokyo SOS Goji figure with the electric blast paint by Kiru. I gave him the paint scheme of his 2000 or 1999 in Japanese release Incarnate, but with a more muted blue body texture and brighter purple fins. This would explain the Zynektic energy building up. Regarding Chapter 6, it's referred that President Johnson was behind the Godzilla clone's creation. The idea itself was only referenced in this novel in Godzilla vs. Mysilika, and assumed that the clone was going to be used for political warfare. While Chapter 6 had one reporter suggesting Richard Nixon ended the project, it was Reagan who set up a team to prevent nuclear-powered monsters to be made, all the way from him until after Bill Clinton finished his second term. It was slowly beginning to dissolve when Obama took over and considered using him for his needs, until Orange Man Bad happened and kept it from happening. Then your Sleepy Joe makes a brilliant move to use the Godzilla project against America's best interests. Aside from that, Zynektic Godzilla can shoot the Zynektic breath, which he can use just as much damage as his atomic one. He can open portals to other dimensions and unleash a wave of energy from his body, similar to his burning Godzilla form in both Destroyer in 2019's King of the Monsters. He eventually gets a life fiber powered form in the end of Kill la Kill Remnants of Rockyo. It's shown in many of his scenes that he's too powerful, more powerful than Final War's Godzilla. That's an impressive record if you ask me. Mortal Brothers 2019 would have ended earlier if it wasn't for Comedic Comrade's contribution. He not only opened the possibility of Godzilla having his part in the series, but also opened up more ways for me to expand upon it. I know something like this can be a bit of a risky move in creative writing, but it can also be used effectively. And I believe that Mortal Brothers 2019, knowing it's pretty much filled up with lore, is one of my most ambitious works. With Mortal Brothers 2019 officially done, thank God, I can now put more time into other things, such as Megatronic Legacy. Thanks for watching, and also thanks to Comedic for being part of the video explaining his side of the origins for this novel into video. Feel free to subscribe, check out my other content, and I'll catch you all next time. Over and out.